Hey everybody, welcome to my channel, Leo the Lefty, and I'm Leo. Today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm not going to cover a case or a historical event or anything. I'm going to do a little how-to video, and it's going to be how to draw a fantasy map. This is just an example of mine. I drew this, I don't know, a year or so ago, and I drew it while I was watching TV and just sitting around doing nothing, but I wanted to draw, so I drew something. But today we will start with a clean slate. So I'm going to take you through my process. I didn't really realize I even had a process until I went to start planning this video and started writing things down. And so I'm just going to show you guys how I do it. First of all, I will start off with, I'm using, because I'm doing a map and not just a drawing, I'm using some watercolor paper because it's thicker and the ink will set better on it. And then I'm using the my trusty Uniball pen. I've been using these for years. I love them. They're waterproof. They're mostly smudge proof, but I'm sure they are great for right-handed people, but for left-handed people, I still get some smudge, which I'll show you later. I'm sure it'll happen while I'm drawing this, and I might even smudge the map, but that's okay. We're going to work it into it. So usually when I'm drawing these, I'll use a pencil, and then I'll go back when I've done everything I want to do in pencil and cover it with ink, and then if I'm going to color it, I'll color it. If not, then I'll leave it like this one. This one I did in pencil, and then went back later and traced it over in ink because, yeah, I make a lot of mistakes, so I like to erase them. I'm not going to do that here because I don't think pencil will show up too well on the camera, so I'm just going to wing it and do pen, and we'll get into sort of how I do fantasy maps my way. So the first thing I think about when I'm doing it is, am I doing it just for fun, like the one I showed you where I'm just watching TV and I'm just drawing, or do I have a purpose? I do have maps that I've drawn for specific purposes. I have drawn hundreds of maps. I love maps. The older the better. So I love drawing fantasy maps. I love world building for my writing. And I have actually drawn a single world on sheets of paper like this. And you can put the whole map together and it shows the whole world that I've built, all the places and things and all that, and it takes up my whole living room floor. I think there's something like 45 maps, 47, something like that. Anyway, neither here nor there. So today I don't have a purpose other than this video, so I'm going to just do random whatever, and I have no idea what it's going to look like at the end, so we'll find out together. If I had a purpose, I might have an idea of what I wanted, and that's, yeah, I need to cover that. If you do have a purpose, make sure that you've made a little side note of things you need. Do you need a town in a specific place, a certain distance away from some other important landmark? Do you need certain, areas to be a certain way with like mountains or desert or valleys and things like that? Just, if you have a purpose for your map, just make sure that you're keeping all that in mind. I need lists to help me remember everything. So I write a lot of lists. In fact, I'm using a list right now to make sure I hit all the points I want to hit with you guys. So, all right, so today, purpose of this map is to show you guys what I do. So I'm just going to draw a random shape. And again, I would be doing this in pencil, and that way if I wanted to go back and change something later, I could. But I spend hours drawing these, and I'm not going to make you sit through 2 hours of me drawing a map, hopefully. I'm not going to color it today. I'm thinking that will be too long of a how-to episode, so I'll break that down. Today we're just going to draw it out, and then in a second video I will color it, perhaps, if this video does well enough. We'll see. We'll see. I never know what I'm going to do, and I change my mind a lot. But if people want it, I'll give it to them. If nobody asks, I may do something else instead. Because I do have regular cases I want to get back to, but I was in the mood to draw a map, so I thought, why not do it for the camera? So like I said, I'm going to do random shapes. This is going to be the outline of our map. We'll give it a peninsula here. There. Hopefully y'all can see that. I'll go back and fill it in later. We're just starting with a general outline of what we want here. I feel like that might be a little too bright. Hopefully y'all can see that. I'm so sorry. Let me turn off this lamp. Is that better? I think that's, y'all can see a little bit better now. In fact, I'll go over it again darker now that I've got the shape I want. That way you can kind of see what I'm doing. Normally I would wait until later to go back and outline it, and I would just continue doing what we're going to do here in a minute, but I really want you guys to be able to see this, so I'm just going to make it a little bit darker. And because I'm left-handed, I do it all kinds of wonky ways. Well, maybe not totally because I'm left-handed, but also because I'm just me. Other left-handed people might also not know what I'm doing. There we go. Okay. So I want to give it a few little islands here to make things interesting. All right. And another thing I guess I should have mentioned earlier is before you draw out your map shape, if you're going to do a border, especially like before you start, maybe definitely pencil and measure out how thick you want your border to be. I would do that. I have done that on many, many maps where I will decorate the border and everything around them after I'm finished with the map itself, and it looks really cool. All right. So this is going to be our mainland, and then we've got some islands here to keep things interesting. I might add more out here later. We'll see. I'm not going to go too far out on this map because I'm just giving you a general how-to. If I was drawing it for myself for a specific reason, I might spend a week on it or more, just depending on the time I have available and if I wanted to. So we've got some islands, some peninsulas, some coves. It's a little interesting on the outside. We're getting there. So the next thing you're going to want to do is rivers, lakes, things like that, mountains, forests, all this before you start putting in your towns and everything. Unless you know for sure, like, oh, there's a specific town in the book I'm writing about that is in this mountain range. Well, let's say there's a mountain range here. We're going to draw in just some squigglies. And you can shape your mountains however you want, obviously. We'll do something interesting like that. And make this like a cave entrance mountain here. Can you see that? I hope you can. Anyway, so we're going to keep defining these mountains a little bit. I'll draw the general shape of them and then go back and fill in more later. Okay, so we've got a mountain range. Again, I feel like it's a little bit, yeah. All right, so we're gonna do a river, and this is why I would do it in pencil too, so that I can have like my rivers flowing, or my water flowing in, you know. And we'll do a lake here, because water does not flow up in mountains, but yeah. And we'll do a river here that intercepts with the salt water and mixes with the fresh water from the ice glaciers. Yeah. So you'll want to add your rivers and lakes that you're used to. Some of you will get that, some of you won't. Any water features? Let's throw a lake right here too. In fact, we'll do a few lakes. I just need to remember those are lakes. Okay? We'll go back and fill in the water here in a little bit. We're not going to leave it this blank. But for now, we're going to pay attention to the land. So, towns and cities, you'll need to make a decision. Do you want to just put a dot and then a town name, which might, if you're trying to fit a lot of text, writing on a map to explain a bunch of different locations, you might be forced to do that. But if you're doing something a little more general, like I've got both kinds where I needed to fit a lot of information into one map, and so I just did little dots and wrote the town name. But sometimes, if I can, I'll do some buildings. And by that, I'll do like some squares. Just some basic squares to signify a town, you know. And sometimes I might put like little pointed rooftops on them to symbolize other buildings. Sometimes I might draw in like a castle, a cathedral, churches, cemeteries, all that kind of stuff. I'm not going to get into that today because that could take a long time to be that thorough. But there's a tree. I don't know. I hope you guys can see that. But I'm going to throw in some trees around here. And you can do your trees however you want. I will mix it up. I'll do, you know, if I'm doing like a forest or whatever, I'll put different shapes of trees in there just to keep it interesting. Sometimes I'll do like a cluster of trees. I hope you guys can see that. Yeah. I mean, it all comes together with the more detail you give, and then when you color it in, I have lots of like antique paper. It's not actually antique paper, it just looks antique, and I'll do maps on that a lot of time. The only reason I didn't do it here is because I felt like, because it's so brown, the black ink wouldn't show up as well on camera. But you can make a map on any kind of paper you want. I've got some cool like borders I drew that I might make a map on one day. Okay, and so there we go. We've got this little civilized area over here. And then you're going to want to do roads, and you can do roads however you want. On this particular map, I will do a dotted line. And that will signify different roads to different places. And you can come down here to the water and make a little bridge. You decorate it however you want. And make roads that go in different directions if you want. You know, that the cool thing with these is when you're drawing them yourself, you can be as detailed or as vague as you want, you know, or general, whatever. And then you can decide, are you going to do roads and then a path and then people and animals, things like that. How detailed do you want to be for this map that you are creating? And again, keep in mind if you're going to be using a lot of writing, then you should keep that in mind while you're giving yourself space, because you don't want to have not enough space to write something where you either have to do it so small nobody can read it, or it looks bad, or where you start out and then your word has to shrink or whatever. So just, we'll see, just as an example, here we'll draw a little goblin village, and we'll give them like little huts on hills and stuff. Yeah, goblin village. And we'll call it, Blognog. Blognog Goblin Village. I'm sorry, I can't talk today. So there we go. You know, you can start being as detailed as you want. You can put a road to the lakes here. You can add in, say, maybe a little cemetery if you want, you know. Little tombstones, you know. There's your cemetery. You also need to decide if you're going to make a key or a legend. Are you going to have the directions north, south, east, and west? You know, we'll say we'll do that just to make it a little more interesting. There we go. And, you know, you can fancy that up however you want. That's the cool thing, is you can be as plain or as fancy as you want, and it doesn't really matter. Like, maps look cool no matter what. I have always loved maps, and I have always found them fascinating and everything like that. And okay, so I'll shut up about how much I love maps. I'm going to go back around the edge of the border of the land to give it kind of a shoreline. Just to, it makes it more interesting. Gives it some more depth to pop off the page. And, you know, when I would color this, I would do it a slightly different color than the land. And on the land, you know, I'd fade in from green to brown to grays and all that, depending on the geography of where I wanted things to be. There. We'll know they're islands if they have a little bit of a shoreline. Alright. So we're going to come back and do some stuff in the water now. We got this lonely little corner down here. So I'm going to draw like a sea monster. And I know it doesn't look like much at the moment, but just give me a second. Well, and cool thing about sea monsters, you can draw whatever you want. There we go. We'll give them a little googly eyes down here. And then you can draw them in some little body. We'll give them a tail. Woohoo! And we got ourselves a sea monster. Makes it a little more interesting. We'll put some boats in down here. That way you can just tell that it's kind of like a port. Oh, speaking of, we'll do a little dock that comes out a ways. Yeah, see, I mean, once you get your general stuff in, whatever you want, you know, then you go back in with the details. And there's a boat. We'll put one out here. And I mean, a lot of this is just like kind of drawing shapes and then going back and putting in the detail later. And that's kind of what I like. I'll get the general stuff out of the way, and then I like to go back and do like interesting things. Like, say, you know, down here you want it to be like some sort of haunted, like, forest garden or whatever. I don't know what like maybe a mushroom forest. So you can go all through here and draw a bunch of, you know, giant mushrooms that look the same size as the trees. So it's very clear that they're gigantic. And, you know, you can throw in some little swirls and leaves and flowers and everything to make it look more interesting, depending on your vibe. It's all about your vibe, whatever you want to do. See? And in no time, you got a little mushroom forest here. I'm going to just put in some swirls here. But, you know, I've drawn, just to practice, I've drawn like maps of real places. I've drawn, you know, England, Scotland, and Ireland and Wales many times. I've drawn Game of Thrones maps. I've drawn maps from like fantasy series that I read and everything, especially if it has a map in it. But oh man, I've had lots of practice, so I've done some really ornate ones and I've done some very casual ones, and I never get tired of it. It's always a good time for me. And I love looking at other people's maps too. So if you have an awesome map, show me. I'd love to see it. If you want me to, you know, shout it out and all that, I'll do that too. Just make sure to leave me your name so I can credit you as the artist. I'm very big on that. Okay, so we're going to go back and give it a little bit of depth here in the water. We can put some waves in so that it's very clear that it's water. And, you know, I might really go all out on one of these and put like all kinds of sea monsters and mermaids and boats and other things like that in, but for today's purposes we're just going to do the basics. And let's see, I don't know, I feel like we need to do something over here. What are we going to do over here? You know what, let's put in a spiral city. And we'll just start with a building here, a building there. I'm literally just thinking of this as I go. And that's how cool it is. I don't know, super relaxing for me anyway, to just kind of draw random shapes and see what happens. Because if I don't know what it's going to look like when it's done, then I'm always pleasantly surprised. We'll put a couple of roofs on some of these to make them look more interesting. There we go. Yeah, and that fills in some space. And again, you know, it really just depends on how detailed or general you want to be and what all kind of features you want. Now, I'll talk about coloring a little bit on this, but I'm not going to color it. I'll doodle whilst I talk about coloring. So first, what I would do when I'm coloring is if I'm going to use markers on anything, and I'll use markers on any buildings, trees, roads, rivers, forests, things like that, boats, sea monsters, all that. I do all the markers first so that that can really set in the ink and everything. And, you know, I'll take breaks and let it dry and all that kind of stuff. So that's another thing. If you're, you know, really working hard on a map, you really don't want smudges. So just be careful, especially if you're left-handed, that you're letting your ink dry and everything. So that's why I go through and I do the markers first. And then I usually use pastels for the water so that I can smudge it. But I'll take care of the land first. I might use pastels on the land or colored pencil to do, you know, whatever colors. I might want the mountains to be kind of gray and craggy, so I'll use gray. And then I might want over here in Blognog to be like very green and brown and everything, and maybe some weird trees and stuff that I want to be a strange color. Maybe I want these trees to be like generally purple, you know. So I'll go through and make them purple with the markers, and then that way when it's dry, the marker really pops off the page if you have pastel or colored pencil around it, and it just makes it look really good. So I'll, you know, get the land, general land space colored, and then I'll go through with different colors of blue, green, aquamarine, turquoise, any sort of watery colors, and I'll color over it. Some areas, like maybe I wanted this right in here to be very, very green water, and then I would make sure to color that in more green and then blend it out into the blue ocean. Or maybe I want the ocean green, more green. I've done purple oceans and green oceans and things like that, so maybe that's what I want it to be, or what you want it to be, whatever. Once I've done that, I'll go through with silver and gold paint pens. So if you're doing buildings that are a little bit bigger, this is the biggest one I drew, so we'll put windows in here. And then I would go through and color those, like windows. I like to color in gold because it makes it look like there's, you know, like firelight inside. And then the silver I'll use to do like the rolling caps on the waves of the water and the snow in the mountains. And I'll color the rivers and lakes and everything, whatever color I want the water to be. And then to give it kind of a look, like I might do a purple lake with like gold shining off of it, you know? But I might do regular blue water with a little bit of silver in it just to make it look like, you know, sort of rippling water. But what happens is when you hold the map up in the light, it will, you know, the metallic paint catches the light and it really pops. It looks amazing. So I do paint pen last. I always do those last because they take longer to dry, and you want them to be the top layer of color so that they really pop and everything. Because if you color over them with pastels or colored pencils or marker, it really dulls the shine. So if you're looking for a high shine and that color to pop, use those. They're amazing. I'll outline trees with them. I'll, you know, like if I was going to color this right now, the mushroom forest, I would do bright, vibrant colors, pink, purple, green, aquamarine, all of that. And then I would go back with a paint pen and put in little like silver and gold leaves or specks on the mushroom tops or the middle of the flowers or something, just to, excuse me, just to give it a little extra depth and everything. And I might put some gold shiny scales and dark green skin on the sea monster, you know, just so that would really pop and shine. So I love paint pens. They're great. You just got to really make sure you shake them well and always test them on a scratch piece of paper before you start using them. That way you've worked out any like sudden blobs that might come out or anything, and keep the lids on really tight. They will dry out if you don't use them for a long time, but you know, they're worth it. They're a good investment. So I really do think that's everything that I can kind of tell you about creating a fantasy map. Most of it is up to you, what you either need or want. Just kind of be mindful of how much space you have when you've put your land and where you want your landmarks and buildings and towns to be, and give yourself enough room for that. If it helps, do what I do and make a list ahead of time of what you need and want for your map. And that way you don't start and then get into it and think, oh, I forgot about, I wanted this mountain range over here or whatever, you know. Kind of think it out before you start if you're doing it with a plan. If you're doing random, just do whatever. I mean, literally, we spent, I can't even tell how long I've been filming, but you know, 20 or 30 minutes, and this is what I've come up with. And it's not my best work, of course, but it's, you know, a pretty general idea of what you can do in not a lot of time and not a lot of skill, obviously. There are much better map makers out there than me, cartographers, excuse me. But, you know, if you're doing it for a hobby, this isn't so bad. All right, well, thank you for coming to my how-to video today. I hope everyone's doing well. If you've been here before, thank you so much. If you're new here, welcome. If you liked what you saw, if you want to show me your maps, if you have comments, if you want to tell me my map sucks, just leave me a comment, or a like, or a subscribe, depending on how you feel. And I'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody.